Good morning, everyone. So, YouTube friend or frenemy seems to be like a very hot topic. And listening to the Q&A session this morning. So I'm going to try and show you what kids watch, when, how often, and also what are the synergies between streamers and YouTube. But above all, I'm going to show you that tiny viewers can have a massive impact on streaming trends. So first of all, where and when kids are watching. But first, I'm going to tell you why this is important. And this is important because there is one thing that keeps streamers awake at night, and it's frequency of viewing. So subscribers can be a bit volatile. Some subscribers watch often. Some subscribers don't watch at all. As you can see, for example, in this graph, this is the percentage of subscribers for each of these platforms that access weekly each of the platforms. For example, in 2024, in the UK, every week, 52% of the subscriber base on Netflix accessed or watched something, and less so for Disney Plus and Prime Video. Although we have to be careful because each of these streamers are creatures on their own, so they have their own history, their own strategy, so that we have to bear that in mind. But still, these numbers indicate that there's a bunch of subscribers that are very volatile. They don't watch content frequently. And this, of course, could raise some concerns for long-term retention of subscribers, but also the perception of the quality of the content itself. But kids bring the streams and the joy, of course, because the households with kids usually watch a little bit more than households without kids. So again, this graph is telling us the numbers of days in a month in which households with kids and households without kids watch something on the platform. For example, on Prime Video, let's use this Prime Video this time as an example, households with kids access the platform to watch something 8 days in a month, compared to 6 days for households without kids. So overall, on average, households with kids watch 2 days more compared to households without kids. And not only households with kids watch more, but also they create or they generate the very first peak of viewing in the day. So these two lines represent the distribution of viewing, or streams in this case, for non-kids content, the green line, and the kids content, which is the line in black. And you clearly see that there's the first peak for kids content is between 6 and 8, which usually is around the preschool time when kids are having breakfast. And then we have the second peak, which is around between 5 and 7, which is after school pre-dinner time. And we see that the very first peak of non-kids content, so for adults, is around 8 o'clock. So there's a big portion of the day that is dominated by kids viewing. So the first 2 peaks of the day is for kids viewing. So kids not only brings in the frequency, as we've seen before, but also they kind of maximize the total viewing during the day, the total reach during the day. And now we have looked at the distribution of viewing across streamers, and also we looked at YouTube, and also we compared it with linear TV. And for me, it was interesting, very interesting to see that it doesn't matter if it's Netflix or Prime Video or YouTube or even linear TV, the distribution of viewing is very similar because the viewing, especially for kids, are dictated by their daily routine. So they get up, they have breakfast, they watch a bit of television, and then there's a kind of a drop during the day when they are at school, and then there's another peak at just before dinner time or 8 o'clock. And just to make it very, very, very clear, so this is the distribution of viewing, so the percentage of viewing for in each time of the day. For example, it's very easy, I think, to see for linear TV. The graph means that at 8 o'clock, I think it's 8 o'clock, 10% of the streams happen there. So it doesn't mean really that there's more viewing on linear TV than other platforms. It's just that the distribution of viewing for linear TV peaks at 8 o'clock in the morning with 10% of the streams. And for me it was interesting also because there was such a big difference between linear TV and streamers in YouTube. And for what I could understand, or I think it is that perhaps linear TV is more associated with passive viewing. You might be knowing better than me. But then in the second peak of the day, which is around between 5 and 7, there's a kind of a switch. The Prime Video, Disney+, Netflix, and YouTube, they have a higher percentage of their streams happening there. So it seems that there's a kind of a preference towards the streaming platforms in the second part of the day. So we've seen that the distribution of viewing is kind of similar in streamers and YouTube and linear TV, but do kids prefer one platform compared to another? So in here, we are looking at multi-subscription households. So those households that have an account with Netflix, also with Disney+, and also with Prime Video. And it turns out that in the UK in 2024, 58% of households with kids with these 3 subscriptions, their first stream was on Netflix. So there was a clear preference of where to go first. The first is Netflix. However, if we look at this from a content perspective, Bluey reigns with 15.5 million first streams of the day. Of course, you can see that Netflix still has a big weight with kids' content because 7 out of 10 titles are on Netflix. So really, really, kids' content in Netflix are still a strong assets. It's also interesting to see that only a couple of titles are originals versus licensed. So we have Gabby's Old House, and Spidey that are originals, but then the rest is licensed content. And licensed content is very attractive for a few reasons. So one is familiarity and trust. So parents and kids tend to prefer brands that are well-known and respected. And also there's a lower discovery barrier because children tend to watch over and over the same show. They get tied to specific shows. And also there's we need to take into account the merchandising synergies because those shows that have, an established toy line or books, for example, attached to the show, they can add cross-promotional value for streamers. And some preschool titles, we love some ranking. So looking at YouTube, where there's well-known titles, of course, CoComelon is their flagship, is always one examples of kids' content titles that come up for YouTube, and we are going to see later on a bit more about CoComelon, Miss Rachel as well, that she's also on Netflix now, and then Bluey, of course. And then if we look at the streaming part, Disney reigns again with Bluey, Spidey, etc. But seeing how the trend is going and the fact that now YouTube is becoming a sort of a testing ground for new stars, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this year or maybe the beginning of 2026, Miss Rachel might appear either in the top 10 or top 5 for Netflix. Okay, the top dog, Bluey. I'm sure you have heard about Bluey and this amazing dog and his family. And I would like to start with some top figures, just to show how strong it's going. So, in the UK, in 2024, 60 million hours of viewing for Bluey, and 2.1 million accounts that engaged with the content. And then if we looked at YouTube, again, quite impressive numbers, 3.8 million hours spent and 1.6 million accounts that engaged with Bluey. But keep these figures in mind because then we're going to compare them with Cocomelon. And we also compared Bluey, of course, not from a title perspective, but also from a season perspective. We wanted to understand, how the title is going if we segment it by season. And Bluey leads both at title level and at season level. And you can see in the season level ranking, 3 out of the 5 top seasons is Bluey again. And not only in terms of how much time kids spend on watching these titles, but also the average hours spent. Because look at Bluey, for example, 27.6 hours on average versus 7 hours for Avatar. So it's just, Bluey really, really stands out as a flagship for Disney+. And we also like to compare it with the overall content catalog on Disney+. And look again, Bluey performed better than Grey's Anatomy, Modern Family, and Family Guy altogether, with 5 billion streams. And of course, there are kids that watch Bluey both on Disney Plus and YouTube. And we wanted to understand if there was a preference of platforms there. And there is. And there's a reason for that. But first of all, of those accounts, those kids that watched Bluey, both on Disney Plus and YouTube, 86% of this watched more content on Disney Plus than on YouTube. This means that Disney Plus offers a better experience, and it means that it chooses how it positions the content, what type of content on YouTube and on Disney Plus. Because on Disney Plus, you find the full episode, you have the full experience, while YouTube is used for short form and promotional content. Also, last thing I was going to forget, look at the depth of engagement as well. So 9% of Bluey viewers spend half of their time spent on Disney Plus watching Bluey only. It means that it's got such power and is so important for those subscribers, there would be a problem if Bluey was taken out from Disney. We wanted to understand as well how Disney Plus and YouTube worked together for Bluey. And I decided to put these two timelines together, even if the scale of viewing is different. So the green line is the streams month on month, and you can see it's around 35 million streams. And then you have the black line for YouTube that is around 2 million streams, so much lower, but I just wanted to put them in the same graph to show you how they compenetrate themselves very well. There must be a very clear, a good strategy there. And also you might wonder why the YouTube data start in January 2024. That's just simply because we recently started measuring YouTube, and this is where our data starts from. But you can tell that they really seems to work together. The first peak, which is in for YouTube, which is in March 2024, is when the special, This Thing, is a special in Bluey, was promoted. And then there's also a peak in viewing in May, when it was fully launched on Disney+. And then you have another peak of viewing on YouTube around October, November, because there was the second batch of the mini-sodes on YouTube launched. Again, there was a peak on YouTube because mini-sodes are a much shorter version of Bluey, so YouTube is a better platform for that. So there's a clear strategy on how Bluey is positioned, how the content related to Bluey is positioned on YouTube and Disney+. CoComelon, a YouTube success story. Again, let's start with a few numbers. As I said before, I tried to remember this data for Bluey. So the data, or the viewing data on the streaming platforms is much lower. So in this case, we have 24 million hours compared to 60 million hours of Bluey, and 1.2 million compared to the 2 millions for Bluey. But then, if you look at the performance of CoComelon on YouTube, you have a very similar performance as Bluey. So it's continually doing very well. So 3.8 million hours spent on YouTube watching CoComelon, and 2.2 million accounts accessing CoComelon on YouTube. We did a similar exercise, but we had a slightly different result here. You might well, I'm sure you have read that the viewing of CoComelon on Netflix has been decreasing quite steadily, and CoComelon is going to be moved to Disney Plus in 2027. And you can see a steady decline in viewing from CoComelon starting from November 2023, and actually is when less content was pushed into the platform. But then there's been a steady viewing of CoComelon on YouTube. So it seems that the viewing of CoComelon on YouTube is kind of filling the gap a little bit of the missed viewing on Netflix. So the fact that the CoComelon is going to be moved to Disney Plus is perhaps a good sign for CoComelon that maybe there's a bit of opportunity there to see if the success that he has in YouTube can kind of bring some viewing also on streaming. Here we go. When we compare CoComelon and Bluey, well, first of all, this is the average amount of accounts that access each of the titles in each of the streaming platforms and YouTube. So again, Bluey is clearly at the top with 1.21 million accounts on average on Disney+. But then look at CoComelon. CoComelon performs better than Bluey on YouTube with 0.6 million accounts compared to 0.4 million accounts. So when CoComelon is going to be moved to Disney Plus in 2027, I'm not necessarily saying that the viewing on Disney Plus is going to replace the viewing on Netflix, but perhaps the fact that CoComelon is strong on YouTube, it might open up a window of opportunity for CoComelon. Now, I'm going to finish off with something that we also found quite interesting, and is the fact that kids' content can become a big hit, global hit on YouTube. And I'm starting with this panoramic, don't get scared of all these names, is just to show you how little overlapping there is in terms of top content across countries. This is all the content on YouTube, adult, kids, all the content, and is the top 15 channels for each of these countries. So Germany, France, UK, Italy, and the US. There's nearly no overlap. So clearly, in each country, there's a kind of a different preferences. There are only 2 channels that appear both in the US and in the UK. One is Netflix, and the other one is IGN, which is a gaming and entertaining site. However, look at the kids' content. Look at the kids' channel. So we looked at the same 5 countries, and quite a few of these channels were in the top 20 for multiple countries. So look at the Disney music, for example. It was in the top 20 in all the 5 countries. And so the same for Cocomelon. And then we have Super Simple Songs and Baby Shark in the top 20 of 4 out of 5 countries, and so on and so forth. So it really means that kids' channel and kids' content really has the potential to become a global hit, the same way as some big series become global hits in streamers. So kids' content has got this little extra compared to adult content when it comes to global hits on YouTube. So if there are a couple of things that I would like you to take away from this presentation, number 1, kids' content brings in the frequency of viewing, which is a joy for streamers that sometimes struggle with it. And also, kids' viewing habits are pretty stable and pretty similar across streamers, across YouTube and linear TV. But for most UK kids, Netflix is the first stop of the day. Even if we're seeing then Bluey really reigns when it comes to content. And then YouTube can be a gateway to premium platforms, as we saw in the case of Bluey. So short form content, promotional content on YouTube that push and drive viewing on the premium platform. And finally, kids shows can become global hits on YouTube. One final couple of words from me. So where this data come from and who we are. So Digital Eye has been in the TV measurement industry for quite some time, 20 years, so since Nemo went missing. And in 2019, we kind of expanded to streamers, of course, and we currently measure Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus and Max, and we recently started measuring YouTube. And we are always expanding to new platforms, and we are planning to add Hulu, Peacock, and Paramount Plus by the end of this year. And we cover 20 countries, and we collect data directly from the subscribers' account of managed panels. So we have one panel for each of the countries that we measure. And as Vanessa said, if you want to stop me at coffee breaks or have lunch, just I will be happy to answer any questions, or if you have questions now. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name's Claire. I'm from the BBC, and that is what my question relates to. Both of the brands discussed today are available on BBC iPlayer. Do you think if that was factored in, that would change any of the findings?
It would not, I think, because we also measure BARB data in Digital Eye, and we overlap all our viewing by day, by month, and by hour sometimes, and that did not, it never appeared to have changed much our findings. It may be because the strategy or the content strategy has been always consistent and stable. That could be one of the reasons. However, I would say that nobody should be scared of trying new strategies and see how it goes. And you might have also your own data, your own in-house data. And I think it's always good to compare your data with our data, because we might have a panel of people in a certain countries. You might have your panel of people. So it's always good to interlap or kind of compare the data. But for what we have seen so far, there hasn't been a big impact.
Right. Thank you.
No problem.